Hi guys, I Aziz welcome you to CoedMaster. Reduce function in JavaScript helps us to reduce the elements of the array to a single value, which kind of really helpful in day-to-day job as a programmer. In this video, I am going to talk about reduce function of JavaScript, where we will learn what reduce function is, how it works internally, and then we will see how to implement reduce function from scratch. So without wasting any time, let's get started. Alright guys, so here I have initialized an array with 4 elements, and I have also initialized the initial value is equal to 1. And then we are going to call the reduce function. So here our purpose is to sum all the values from 1, 2, 3, 4 using the reduce function, including the 1 which is the initial value. So let's see how we can achieve this using a reduce function. So we can simply call Array.reduce. Now the reduce function accepts 2 arguments. Number 1 is the callback function and number 2 is the initial value. So let's write a callback function and the second argument is the initial value. Cool. Now the callback function receives 4 arguments. Okay. So the first argument is going to be the accumulator. The second argument is the element. The third argument is the index. And the fourth argument is the array itself. Okay. And from this callback function we have to return something. So here we are going to return accumulator plus element. So what we are basically doing here, we are summing up all the elements of the array, which are 1, 2, 3 and 4, including the initial value, which is equal to 1. So what will be the expected output? It's going to be the 11, because 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is equal to 10, and adding 1 to it gives us 11. Okay, so let's save the file and let's run the program. And you can see the output over here is 11. Excellent job. So now we will understand how the reduce function actually works. So when we call the reduce function by supplying the callback function and initial value, the reduce function is going to invoke the callback function across all the elements of the array. And while calling the callback function, it's also going to pass the value of accumulator, which is equal to the return value of the previous computation on a specific element, right? So what will be the final value? The final value is going to be only a single value, which will be computed after invoking the callback function across all the elements of the given array. As simple as that. So guys, if the things are still not clear to you, don't sweat. When we implement the reduce function, then everything will be clear to you. So please have some patience. Okay. So we understood that how reduce function actually works. Now it's the right time to implement the reduce function from scratch. So here let's call array.prototype.myReduce. So I am giving a different name to this function this time, and it is a function. Okay, and this function accepts 2 arguments. One is the callback function, and the second one is the initial value. Cool. Now we are going to write the algorithm in 4 different steps. The number 1 steps will be validation. Number 2nd step is the initialization, where we will initialize some variables. Number 3rd is we are going to process all the elements of the array. And number 4th, we simply return the result. Okay, we can also say return accumulator. Cool. So let's start with the first step. So here we are going to validate the callback function and the initial value. So let's write, if there is a no callback function, then we can simply throw an error. So let's use the throw keyword, new reference error, with a simple message that callback function must be defined. Excellent. Now let's validate the initial value. So let's write initial value. If we have a valid initial value, then it's fine. We can use the initial value. Else the value is going to be null. Okay, we can simplify it a little bit by using the logical OR operator. Great. So validation part is done. Now let's move on to the next step. Now here we have to define few variables. The first variable is the array itself, on which we are going to call the reduce function. So we can extract the array by using this keyword. Cool. The second variable is we want to store the result. Okay, so for that we want one variable and we name it accumulator. So the value of accumulator depends upon the initial value, whether or not the initial value is supplied or not. So we can check over here if we have proper initial value or not. If we have initial value, then we can use the initial value, or we can consider the first element of the array as an initial value. Great. Now next variable we need to define is the index to track the elements of the array. So if the initial value is not defined, then we are taking the first element of the array as accumulator. So in index, if we are taking the first element as the accumulator, we cannot iterate from the first element, right? Because we have already taken the first element as an accumulator. In that case, we will iterate from this next element or the second element. So we can check if we have initial value. If we have initial value, then we can iterate from the 0th element. Otherwise, we can iterate from the first element of the array. So we have initialized all the three required variables. One is the array, second is the accumulator, and third is the index. So far, so great. Now it's time to process the element. So to process the element, we need to use the for loop. Okay. So we have already initialized the index variable. So we can leave the first segment as it is. Then we can check if index is less than array.length. And then we can simply increment the index by 1. And then we can simply open a for loop block. Inside for loop, first we are going to extract the element by using the array bracket notation by giving it an index. So now we have the element. Now this is the right time to call our callback function. So what we can do, we can simply call the callback function by passing it the accumulator as a first argument, okay, element as the second argument, index as the third argument, and array itself as a fourth argument. Cool. And whatever the callback function returns, we are going to store the result into accumulator like this. And in the last step, which is the fourth step, we are simply return the value of accumulator. Okay, return accumulator. Okay, let's format the code and let's verify this algorithm once again. So here first we are validating callback function, then we are validating initial value, because may be possible that we do not pass the initial value while we call the reduce function. In that case, we are assigning the null to initial values, which will help us later to compute the value of accumulator. And then we are extracting the actual array on which we will call the reduce function. Then we are computing the value of accumulator. If the initial value is supplied, then we will use initial value as accumulator, or we will consider the first element of the array as accumulator. And here we are setting the index for a for loop. Okay, here also we are computing if the initial value is given, then we will start our iteration from the first element, else we will start the iteration from the second element. Okay, then we are running a loop to iterate over all the elements of the array. Inside the loop, we are accessing the element by using the square bracket notation by passing it the index. Then we are simply invoking the callback function by passing the accumulator, element, index, and array. And whatever this callback function returns, we are storing it in a accumulator, so that when we call next time the callback function, we can pass the previous computed value into this callback function. Okay. And in the fourth step, we are simply returning the accumulator as a single value. So now let's use the myReduce function instead of the default reduce function and see the output. Let's save the file and we have error. So what's the error? Assignment to constant variable. Okay, it's my bad that I have declared accumulator as constant. So we have to convert it into a let. Let's save the file and you can see the perfect output as 11. So what we are doing basically, we are summing up all the values, and how we are summing up? We are simply returning accumulator plus element. So the initial value is 1, so it's gonna sum 1 plus 1, 2, 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 3, 7, and 7 plus 4, 11. This is how it works behind the scenes. What if we want to change the initial value? Let's see what happens if we change the initial value. So right now the output is 11. If I update it to 2, it will give us a 12. If I update it to 3, it will give us 13. Excellent job. Now let's check whether our validation is working perfectly fine or not. So in this case, we can simply pass null as a value of callback function, and let's see what happens. Let's save the file and you can see the error is thrown which says callback function must be defined. Great. And what happens if we supply the initial value as null? Let's check this as well. So let's initialize null to initial value. Let's save the file and you can see that the exact output is coming over here, which is 10, because this time we have supplied null as the initial value like this. So the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is equal to 10, and which is correct. So I hope now you have a clear understanding of how reduce function internally works. So this is pretty much all about reduce function. Alright guys, this is all from my side for this video. If you learned something valuable from this video, then please hit the like button in order to make YouTube algorithm happy. Please subscribe to this channel and don't forget to click the bell icon so my friend you never miss any upcoming videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.